them sweet, sweet Trinidad. Cause I love this country bad. I don't want to leave at all. Ever since I small, look up all in sweet, sweet Trinidad. Brother, father, feeling glad. When I get you bury me in the center of the city.
Historical, although I think I'm going to help answer some of the questions. Indira, for instance, asked what could have been. I am going to be a little bit provocative, in fact, in asking what could have been, because I'm going to look at systems and at paths followed. And I want to assure Brian that systems economists do look at systems. We borrow from Gene, and I myself, you heard the word econometrics. I hope you're not hearing that for the first time. My doctoral thesis was on something called the Kalman filter. So he's not here to hear, but I need to push ahead in time, which is borrowed from the electrical engineers. In fact, Kalman is known as the father of modern control theory. It's a whole system, and I worked on something called the Kalman filter, which I applied to economics. I am going to start. I want to, if you just push on, I'm going to try to read it, what is happening there. At the time of independence, many believed that independence was the only path to decolonization. And I want to assure you right away that it is not, that a lot of what we could have achieved, and in fact is being achieved in other places, are resulted from paths that were not the independence path. And by the way, I am thinking of this, that it may not do us any good in Trinidad and Tobago. I was thinking of the West Indies, the Caribbean as a whole. Some of this is valid for other countries within the Caribbean. There's a lot of good reason for this. As a child growing up in the 50s, I would pay attention. Well, India had already gone, but there was Ghana, which became independent in the 60s, in the late 50s, early 60s. Kenya, we actually saw pictures of the war being led by Jomo Kenyatta. Tanzania, Algeria, which was a big one for me because I had a connection to France. Vietnam, of course, which was also France, and then the United States of America. These were all very popular, and independence, they were fighting for independence. They were fighting, and that people did not want to grant them the independence. And so it seemed that that was the end. So many of us thought that being a colony, and the opposite of not being a colony, was to be an independent country, such as we saw. The ones in Algeria, Vietnam, and so on, very, very bloody. And in fact, Sparrow, in his contribution to the independence calypso competition, boasted that we did not have to go through floods of blood. But many people thought independence meant floods of blood. I think it's for other reasons we didn't have the floods of blood, because other models were in fact being implemented even at that time in the Caribbean. You want to go on? And I refer in particular to the departmentalization process in the French Caribbean, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Guyana, Française, and the associated states in Puerto Rico, and there are others that have come into being. Go ahead and see that the French Caribbean is a particularly extreme one. Many people don't know this, and who live outside of it, that Martinique is as part of France as Paris is part of France. The Martinicans vote in the French elections. They have members of parliament who sit in the French parliament, the French Red House. They use the euro, all right, as well, and they use the French franc before. The flag is the tricolor, in case that's the French flag. When I went, I was shocked when I went to France in 1970. I was in France in the 1970s. The captain of the French team at that time, I don't know if those of you who follow football, was a jet black man called Mario Strezor. I don't know if anybody remember him. And that is the reality of France. He was from Guadeloupe, by the way. And if you look at the French team now and you think of it as a European team, they don't look anything European. And that is because the colonies, as they were then, have become parts of France. And you have the right to. The Gazelle, I don't know if you remember that athlete, that beautiful 200 meter, 400 meter runner, was from Guadeloupe as well. They have a local government, of course, what they call the région, just as we have a local government, there's much more autonomy. Other models have come into being, and I look at the Dutch Caribbean has had some experiences. Aruba is one of the most interesting ones. You want to jump it a little bit? Aruba, unlike Martinique, has its own currency, its own central bank, is responsible for its internal affairs, but Arubians, that's how they like to be called, hold a Dutch passport, which, as you know, is a European passport. So when there are elections in Europe, they vote in the European elections. They vote for membership of the Europe. So if tomorrow they want to go and live in England, because they are part of Europe, they could go and live in England. Alright, and Aruba, this is interesting, was supposed to be granted full independence first in 1991. Then in 1996, now they have postponed that totally. They don't want to hear about it. You want to go on? Similar events, similar status and British for remaining British colonies, Montserrat, Anguilla, Turks and Caicos, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, who already enjoy some autonomy and hold British passports and consequently European passports. This is interesting. I'm not going to show you figures, but you just want to check it yourself. All these countries I have called, check the standard of living, and I'm not just talking about per capita GDP, no more quality of life. Women walk down the streets in the middle of the night. They aren't afraid of being raped or anything. Criminality is at a low that you cannot imagine. Martinique and Guadeloupe, like I see these women coming home in the night from party because bus stop walking around 6 in Martinique. I don't know if there's any Martinique here who would want to see this, but they walk the road like this, and they auto stopping as they call it. I said, no, don't jump me too fast, all right? In fact, when I read the speeches of Butler and people like him at the time, I am convinced that that is what Butler had in mind. Butler's, in fact, his party was called something like the British Home Rule Party or something like that. And he had a concern, in many respects he wanted to be, I hope this doesn't sound wrong, a black Englishman. That doesn't mean he wanted to drink tea at 4 o'clock. I mean, he wanted the right to go to Cambridge. He wanted the right of his children to the education that the British were getting, and that is what he was looking for. Somewhere along the way, the thing got turned away into independence, and in fact, independence became fashionable as indicated following the struggles, the correct struggles of the peoples of Africa, India, Algeria, and somewhere there was actually armed insurrection. So, let's push on now. And I believe that the British colonialists wanted to give us independence because we were going to be too costly to give otherwise. And somewhere along the way, they convinced people to do it. I am convinced that the French are now doing that with people in Martinique. They're trying to develop this independence movement because Martinique and Guadeloupe are costing France a lot of money. And they want to get rid of them. And they're finding. So the true fight that the Martinique and Guadeloupe, so it's part of our floods of blood, we wanted to be integrated in the United Kingdom. I want to make a point on this. I don't care if the British wanted that or not. One of the most salient points in capitalism and slavery that I learned is that my forefathers built Britain. And the rights that I have as a consequence are the same rights as anybody born in Britain. So, to the extent that people not of white hue live in England or that is a just reward, if it's anything, because the wealth of Britain grew from the colonies, and in particular from the Caribbean, the cotton and the sugar and so on. And to that extent, I think it would have been a just right to want to be part of what you have built, what is yours, what your grandfather built. And it's the same thing that Martinique and Guadeloupe did, led by a man who was very, very friendly with Eric Williams. In fact, he formed a party in Martinique, which is I forget the name of it off the hand, but you know what the symbol of the party is? His name is Aimé Césaire, by the way. How many of you have ever heard of Aimé Césaire? You know what the symbol of the party is? The balisier, as they call it. You should bear that in mind. They were very, very close friends. And he was one of the founders of something that eventually became known as Negritude, and that you might want to know about. So let's push on very quickly. And I like to quote this. Chalky sang a song once he wants his grandfather's back pay. To a large extent, the people in Martinique and Guadeloupe are collecting their grandfather's back pay. Anybody has ever been to Martinique and Guadeloupe? It's a splendid place, yeah? You are living in Europe, in the sense of the building. You should show some pictures. I mean, I should have done like, and the roads and the kinds of things. But you have the sun and the sea, and you don't have snow anytime during the year. There's officially a high level of unemployment, and that's because people choose not to declare that they are working. There's a large black market, underground economy, I should say. Because when you are not working, you get paid for not working. There's a high level of social security and so on. And that is because they are part of a big system. They are part of France. And if they have a problem, it is because France has a problem. All right? And that is how it is. It's not like Jamaica. When I was a child, $2 US dollars were purchased for $1 US dollar. $2 US dollars were purchased for $1 Jamaican dollar when I was a child. Now it's close to 100 Jamaican dollars purchasing $1 US. I don't know if you could imagine that. That is what, to some extent, I don't like to say this, I don't want it to make it sound bad, but that's one of the consequences of independence. Martinique and Guadeloupe have held on to the euro and the French franc and have tied in their fortunes with that. Of course, one of the nice things about it, when a Frenchman wants to go to New York, he just jumps on a plane and go. You don't have to go in front and look for any multiple indefinite or anything like that. They could choose to live in Venice if they wish to, because that is part of Europe. And of course, they have a currency crisis if the euro is in crisis, which is the case now. But at the same time, that is not, it's not like, and people still accept the euro wherever you go. You want to move on. So, Martinique and Guadeloupe, although there is an independence movement in these countries, I happen to know these countries pretty well for all kinds of reasons. They repeatedly reject calls for independence. They don't want to hear about this. In fact, if the French ever have a problem, it will be trying to give them independence. And it could even be a bloody fight to prevent it from happening. In fact, just about 4 years ago, there was a thing about autonomy. And the Martinicans and Guadeloupans and other people rejected it, and all it meant was they were going to have a little bit more play within the system. They will still be within the Republic, but many of them thought, boy, there's a trick, you know, they're trying to get us ready for independence, and they cut that out and they vote against the thing. So no. So I think you should, you probably now know that Puerto Rico recently voted for full state. Don't move it forward. Because I want to say a few other things about this. That the British, and I'm going right back to this, the British were preparing us for independence all along the way. The Federation was the first step. For those of us who have the age, he was a little boy in school, so he wouldn't know, probably remember in history much about it. But I was wrong when it was happening. Right? when this was going on. And you remember what the federal flag looked like? You probably never seen it in the right? You vaguely might remember it. I know what the federal flag looked like. I saw it. It used to fly above Huggins in San Fernando. I remember that. And the national anthem of Trinidad and Tobago was supposed to be the national anthem for the Federation. You see, side by side we stand, islands of the Blue Caribbean Sea. I don't know how that, it just get put. Now the Federation failed for all kinds of reasons, because Jamaica in the first instance thought that it was costing them too much, and then Eric Williams with his well-known arithmetic said 1 from 10 leaves you 0. This was a play on the words. And I do believe that whereas the British did not want to get rid of India and were ready to fight the Indians, they were happy to get rid of us, and some of us played straight into their hands. Now, I don't want this, and when I raise this discussion, sometimes people get annoyed. They feel that they actually think Martinique and Guadeloupe are colonies, which is not true. They think that Aruba, by the way, Aruba is another one. Aruba must be the ugliest island I have ever seen. But you should go and see. I mean, I don't mean that. I have a West Indian view of beauty. I like to see mountains. I like to see greenery. You don't see that in Aruba. It's ugly because it's flat. You could almost stand from one side of the island. But if you see how pretty they make the place look, you know, with all these Dubai-type buildings that you're talking about, there's a place called the Hotel Porter. And of course, they have naturally beautiful beaches. I must say that that's one thing that they do have compared to the island of Trinidad. But I've seen equally pretty beaches in other islands of the Caribbean. And so you find that I am convinced now that none of the existing non-independent countries will ever choose the path of independence, because they understand now that there are other alternatives. I'm going to end on one short note. I remember this independence thing was so strong. In the 1970s, while I lived in France, there was a big referendum on some little islands of the African continent. I can't remember what they're called, but one of them was called Mayotte. I don't know if you ever heard of the little island called Mayotte. They all voted, except Mayotte, to become independent and to leave the French system. About 8 years ago, there was a move trying to go back in the other direction, when of course it was too late. The French was had to get rid of them, and especially after now paying for this kind of what is going on in Martinique and going. These are developed countries. When you go at them, the road, as soon as you leave the airport, it's dual carriageway all the way. You think you are in Europe when you are in Martinique. It's only when you see the bright hot sun and you see the beaches and so on, and you will probably even see on the beaches ladies without shirts, I mean, put it that way, which is what you probably see in parts of Europe as well. You would believe that you are in Martinique in France, except for the color of the skin of the people, and they do live a very high standard of. They do have a high standard of living, which includes a quality of life, like running water, absence of criminality, high standards of education. You could decide to go to Paris, to university, or you could go to their equivalent. They model their university after us, by the way. They're on 3 campuses, one in Martinique, one in Guadeloupe, one in Guyane Française, and very often, in fact, they call me about certain issues that they're having to try to see how they could resolve it. Thanks very much. We'll go.